الإيمان أن السلام حياة قد جاء في القرآن أن السلام.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to iTREND on ITV. I'm your host, Zaheerah Bham, Ismail. We're always bringing to you things that we've picked up on social media, something that you've sent through to us, people you've recommended, or people that we see making a difference in the lives of others. And one such person that has stood out for us greatly has been Tasneem Basha, and we're here today to share her story with you. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the studio.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you here. Tasneem, you're the founder of a holistic Mind First coaching. Tell us a little bit about what Mind First is.
Okay, well, Mind First, simply explained, is 12 steps. For some reason, humans respond to 12 steps of improvement. So what I've done is put 3 books together with 12 steps each, broken down into different themes like productivity and discipline, emotional independence, and self-esteem. And these were things that I struggled with personally. So I had to work through them myself. When my clients get this is things that I've used, that I know work. So that's basically what it is. And in these included my holistic therapy as well, which I do completely over WhatsApp and email.
Perfect. So we're going to talk a little bit about that after the ad break in a little more detail. But to talk about you, because this was not where you started, this was not your profession.
Not at all. I'm formally trained as a journalist, actually. And when I think of myself still as a writer. I've had works in anthologies and things like that. So it's very much different. But coming from that background, you get a story as a journalist. Being in the media, you get a story and you report on it. And I found there was a big gap for me, because what can you do about that story? There's a human at the other end. And that fed into Mind First. This is the story, but where do we move from here? And I very much wanted to be a part of that. So that's how it was born, basically.
That's amazing, alhamdulillah. It's amazing that for many of the ladies that have sat in the chair that you're sitting in, they start off with one profession, completely find their passion somewhere along the line and decide this is what I need to be doing with my life. How do we define our purpose? How did you define what your purpose is?
I think it really, and I tell this to my clients as well, it comes through in so many different ways, because if your purpose is helping people, you can do that in so many different ways. You do it all the time, through your words, through your rearing of your children, the work you do in your office. But whatever your purpose is, it will eventually come through. You just have to pay attention. This is the effect that I want to have. This is the impact that I want to have. And whatever way you choose it, it will come through. It definitely will.
You've mentioned now paying attention, and I think so often, especially as women, many of the times the inner voices are screaming out, whether it's with our health, whether it's something we need to do, whether it's to trust our gut instinct, and often we suppress it, thinking, no, just let it go to the back of the head. There's so many other things I need to do. How do we start getting in tune with those inner voices again?
Okay, so part of what I do is kinesiology. That's basic muscle testing. So you mentioned our health, and that is a major thing to pay attention to, because I don't believe that we get random illnesses. Just by the way, you've got this, that one's got this. Our illnesses tell us something. For example, somebody who's got a cough that won't go away, it's something that's sitting on the chest. You're sort of barking for attention over some matter or the other, and that cough won't go away until you address that. Constant fevers is burning anger that you've not processed. So those are things that we can pay attention to when our health comes along, and that's what holistic means. So we'll treat you, your emotions, your physical health, and I do try to put the spiritual in there as well. It is contained in my workbook, so I'm not a learned person in any way, but it's part of our daily lives. We need it in there. Absolutely. So that's something we can pay attention to in terms of becoming aware of ourselves, is our health and what it's saying. And I do that in my courses as well.
That's amazing. And also you just reiterating the fact that everything is linked. As our beings, every part of us, whether it's our spiritual, our physical, our emotional, everything manifests in some way or the other.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if one suffers, all of them do. And once you heal the others, you feed the energy through into the other links.
So many women I speak to on a regular basis feel they don't have time to look after themselves because they're so busy looking after everyone else in their family, from spouses to communities to parents, in-laws, our own children, that there's no time for us ourselves, that there's so little that we can say, okay, I've got time to do this for myself. How do you encourage women to actually say, I need to make time to be able to be okay so that I can give off myself to other people?
Well, I think I'm very shouty. I'm adamant on this because we've come such a long way in terms of women's rights and things like that, but the thought pattern is still there. The more you sacrifice yourself, the more wonderful you are, to put it simply. And that is simply not the truth. And I tell my daughter this, my eldest daughter, and I say, when a woman heals herself, she's healing everybody else around her. Because she comes to me and she tells me, you know, I'm thinking this and I'm going through that and whatever. But a child knows if a mother is going through something that is difficult for her, a child can pick that up, even if it's not said, and she will immediately withdraw into herself. A husband can pick that up. And so if you have everybody going into their own shells, this is how families fall apart in communities. But once that mother, whether she's married or not married, woman, once that woman heals herself, she opens up the door for so many others to heal and then to be strong. So I'm adamant. Self-healing is a service. It's not a nice to do. It's an absolute service to humanity. And what we don't heal now, what we are not aware of now, it bleeds into the next generations. So it's an absolute necessity from my point of view.
It's imperative that we do take care of ourselves and we do look after ourselves. I like the fact that you mentioned it bleeds going forward. And if we don't start paying attention to those small whispers, it's detrimental for ourselves.
Yes.
You mentioned now about your daughter. How do you balance it all in terms of having your family and doing all of this?
Well, I think I was very much a control freak. And everything had to be in order and everything had to be done at a certain time. And I actually wound myself up to such an extent that I became paralyzed down the one side. And I had to stop and say, what is this telling me? What is this telling me? That I don't have control. Allah is in complete control. And as much agency as we have to realize that He is the ultimate controller. And saying that, I promise you, the feeling and the movement came back, you know, by itself, slowly. And now, if it happens, it happens. When it happens, it happens. I do my best. Have I done my best? Yes, I have. We can move forward and we can go that way. But yeah, some days are just hectic and some days aren't. And it helps me personally to remember these people who are living much more hectic lives and there are people who are living much more calm lives. And this is just what I have right now. It will change. All things have a cycle, and that's it.
You mentioned something so huge about the paralysis, but you make it sound like you've just taken that in your stride, which is even bigger than many of us. I mean, so many of us complain about very small things. You mentioned an entire paralysis in the same sentence of saying, all I need to do is try my best and carry on. How did you even cope with that?
I think when I was very scared, I sort of go back into what I can do. And I'm very much about this, what can I do? And that motivated me with mine first, with my life, with so many things. How much of agency do I have? I mean, that's my constant dua daily. I want agency in my life. And knowing that, okay, I don't have the physical agency now, but what mental agency do I have? What emotional agency do I have? These things are now, the level of my physical ability has gone down, but I need to raise these up and learn from there. So I think when you're at the deep end, you've got no choice but to swim. And that's sort of the way I took it. I mean, I had a newborn baby to look after. My husband was writing exams. The other kids were writing exams. It was Ramadan. So it was like, big boots on and let's go for it, you know. That kind of thing. Basically, that's it. And I take it on the chin, you know. You have to take it on the chin and keep going forward.
Allah give you strength always. I think, you know what amazes me is that when we watch on social media, and if you actually follow Tasneem, she's always got the most positive comments or quotes or something that every time you read it, you almost think she wrote something that was just for you, and it somehow resonates with you at the right time. And I'm sure I'm not the only person that feels that, because every time I see her page, there's a message there that's meant for me. But what's amazing is the stories behind the people that are putting it out. I didn't even know this about you. And I know just before we started the show, there was something else you mentioned also about your family and your children. And I think so often many of us don't realize the real humanness behind the personas that we see.
Yes, exactly. So I was mentioning to you before we started that my first son, I lost my first son. He would have been 13 years old. And with him, I was in labor for 3 days, and that was negligence. But I mean, Allah's will is His will. It happened as it happened. And that was my first son. And he passed away at full term. I was 39 weeks, you know, you're expectant. I mean, the word expectant is so loaded. You are expectant. And accepting that and working through that actually took me 8 years. And that's what took me into holistic therapy, learning about holistic therapy. It took me 8 years to actually cry. I hadn't cried from the time it happened until 8 years later. And then I had my daughters, and then I was on this precipice after my daughters, after I'd left journalism, because I've been in journalism and media for quite a while. I was on this precipice that there's something new that needs to happen. And before that, I remember so clearly, it was Laylatul Qadr, the 27th night, yes. And I remember thinking, I'd like a son, but I'm too afraid to pray for it. But that dua was in my heart, obviously. And within a month, I was expecting. It was quite a shock. And well, after that, I went through the pregnancy, which was very tough. At the end, I was on crutches as well. And went through the surgery, which was gory, to say the least. And that's when the paralysis happened. And I remember thinking that with the first son, he passed away. And with the second son, I'm going to, because that's how close it came in the surgery, where my pressure dropped and, things went really awry at that moment. And it's sort of like coming full circle. It was sort of coming like full circle. And when I came out of there, the expectation that I have to move. And it's always been something that's part of me, who I am. I have to do the next thing. Not always a good thing, but I think that alone pushed me. I'm always looking for the next level up, the next thing I can learn, the next thing I can do, the next thing I can be and have an impact on. And when Yusuf my last one was 3 months old, that's when mine first started. So they're more or less the same age. And I always say these are my 2 babies. And that, going through that with postnatal depression, all of that informed so much of mine first. And that's why I say what I use is in my work, and that's why it's relevant to my clients today.
Alhamdulillah. After listening to that, I think we need to take an ad break. We'll be back talking to Tasneem Basha after the ad break. Stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back after that ad break. We're speaking to the very dynamic Tasneem Basha, and listening to her story, there's no way you can sit here and not be moved. I always say, when we see what we see on social media, these are personas, but there are real human stories behind that. And I think the message constantly for all of us out there is, when you're dealing with people on social media, be kind always, because you have no idea what the person on the other end of that screen is going through. And Tasneem herself is an example of the strength behind what she's gone through and how much positivity she still is willing to share with so many of us. Tasneem, before we went for the ad break, you mentioned something about postnatal depression. I think depression is something we've been talking about for such a long time, but it's a hidden illness, and so many of us are not aware of it. How does the program or Holistic Mind First work in terms of being able to deal with that? Because I always feel that we as a community are answerable for letting people feel that they are alone, that we haven't been there to support them.
Exactly that. Well, first, I have to say, I don't make any claims about curing depression or helping people through, but I do have clients who come to me with that issue. And what you say there, people feeling alone, we stigmatize it so much. I can't tell you how many clients or potential clients come to me, and the first thing they say is, please don't tell anybody I'm speaking to you. And the first thing that comes up for me there is how vulnerable we feel. How vulnerable do you have to feel to first, please don't do this. Please don't let anybody know I'm seeing a psychologist or psychiatrist. And the truth is, so many people are. But why is there the stigma attached to it? I mean, we don't have the stigma related to any other illness. But you're right, we are fine with making people feel alone, but even worse than that, we are fine with making people feel bad for their choices. We are so quick to say, why are your feet dirty? I saw a post just yesterday. Somebody asked, why are your wife's feet dirty in that post? I mean, something so minuscule. So in terms of that, besides making people feel alone, we berate them, we insult them. Of course we'd feel afraid. Of course we'd feel afraid. And I think where Mind First comes in there, I'm glad you brought that up, is people are afraid to say, I know I was afraid to say, I'm going to see a psychologist. I know I was afraid to say. So that is why Mind First caters for that. It's on your phone. Nobody has to know what you're doing, how you're working, whatever. It's private, it's on your time. It's in your own space. So you have that privacy, and you have that somebody. I like to tell people, I'm here. I may get back to you later, but I am here Just know that I'm here. Sometimes I don't like to check up on my clients all the time, but I do say to them, just know I'm here. And anybody, you don't have to be a psychologist to do that. You don't have to be anybody special to do that. You are somebody special to somebody else when you say those words, know I'm here, whenever you need me. This doesn't need a response. You can even say that this doesn't need a response, but know that I am here.
And that compassion is something that's so lacking. And so many people just need to hear that. And sometimes even the people that seem to be the strongest are the ones that tend to need it the most.
Yes, definitely. Besides being the strongest, I always tell my kids, the moment when they are difficult to love, when your brother or your sister is most difficult to love is when they need it the most. And we need to apply that, especially when it comes to social media. Those people who are going out there and saying, going frantically about things and talking, just upsetting you the moment, those are the people that need love. They need mercy. They need understanding. Hurt people.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the one thing, as Tasneem had mentioned also, is we need to be so cautious about when we're speaking to people and I've heard this being said so many times, and it's something that we actually just need to stop, is to say, oh, your iman is not enough if you are in depression. And I'm sure you've come across that a number of times, and I think it's something that needs to stop with immediate effect.
Absolutely. It happened to me personally when I was going through the depression. You don't need to speak to somebody. And yes, we know Allah is there. Without a doubt, He's our wakil. He's definitely there. He's guarding us. He's watching us. He's al-Wadud. He's the most loving. The Prophet ﷺ himself went through that year of Amal Huzn. What difficulty didn't he go through? And the grief that he went through and we go through can never be compared. But he went through it. He suffered. He was psychologically hurt. So, while there is a link there's a link between my faith and how strong I feel emotionally, definitely. It doesn't mean that if you're down on the one, it automatically means you're down in the other. This could just be your test.
Absolutely. And I think that's something we need to be conscious of. Tasneem, just very quickly, when you mention on the mind first concepts, in terms of people who are watching, those people that are sitting at home and saying, this may be the thing that works for me. You mentioned this is something that somebody can do anywhere in the country, anywhere from around the world, from their phones. How is that possible?
Well, absolutely. I have clients out of SA overseas. All you do is you get emailed a workbook. It has the 12 exercises, and then I'm available to you over WhatsApp. It's plain and simple. That's it, plain and simple, no mess, no fuss. I'm there. The exercises are absolutely tiny. I believe in baby steps. My clients will tell you, I yap on about this. The smallest steps, consistently over time, build success, build success. Don't go and do massive changes that you can't maintain. The littlest things.
That always reminds me also from an Islamic perspective, we were always taught through our madrasa days and from my grandmother and them, just do small things every day. Don't do huge amounts that you can't keep up with. Yeah. Just small things every single day, and that will be consistent enough.
Absolutely, and that's built me up. It's absolutely, because sometimes you think, oh my gosh, I'm so, consumed by all these things that I have to do, or I'm so dependent on so and so for my emotional health, or I don't have no confidence, I need to do this massive thing. You don't have to. And like I say, break it down into the smallest physical step. I always use the jogging example. If you are going to go jogging, how can you prepare for it? Don't psych yourself up and go and watch a million videos. Take your tackies out the night before. That's the smallest physical step you can take, and from there, build on that.
Alhamdulillah. How has the response been from people in terms of this? Because as we said, we came from generations where people said, you don't go and speak to others, you don't go to psychologists, you figure things out yourself, you learn to deal with it. And obviously we've seen the ramifications of people being very damaged because of feeling alone and isolated, and that something must have been wrong with them, that they were not okay with so many things that happened along the way. What has the response been from people that are able to tap into this?
Well, I think people are so relieved. The first impression, I'm so relieved to be able to be doing this quietly. Yes. That's the first impression I get. And then a lot of them tell me, I am seeing a psychologist, psychiatrist, and I have done this and I have done that. And that's what I like about Mind First, that you can plug it in to whatever else you are doing. You don't have to be seeing somebody, but if you are seeing a professional in any other field, even if it's a fitness coach, you can plug this in. And people have used it. I like how they've used it in so many different aspects, in so many different spheres, from growing businesses to becoming, more conscious about when they're performing salah, and doctors, in the ER. And it's been amazing, because creating this was a feat for me. And then seeing what people done with it is just beautiful.
Alhamdulillah. And what a sense of accomplishment in terms of being able to impact people's lives positively as well. Have you found that that has helped healing you in the process also?
Absolutely, absolutely. My teacher, my holistic therapist teacher, always told us in her class that you will find clients come to you and they will mirror the exact same issues that you are having. And at the time I thought, well, what am I going to do in that case? Because I'm struggling through it. And it's proven so true. All these years later, her words have proven so true, because exactly what I'm going through, what I'm processing, I might be stumped for an answer. What do I do? And once I hear it from another person, the way becomes a little clearer and a little clearer. And I've made such deep connections working that way, because the work has become so authentic.
That's it. And I think that's what we miss. We miss being real. And we don't find that anymore, because everything is so out there that we've forgotten, and filtered, that we've forgotten how to just be in touch with our real selves. I remember at one stage of saying to myself, I don't even know what I like. I don't know when last I've asked myself what I actually enjoy. And I don't know how many of you have done that, to actually ask yourself what you like, not what someone else likes, what someone else thinks you like, but what do you like? What do you like eating? What do you enjoy doing? And I think we tend to get lost in this space.
Absolutely. And that is actually the question that upsets people the most, who come to mind first when I ask them, what do you mean, what do I want? How would I know what I want? Why should I know what I want? And that's a question I battled with. Of course I don't know what I want. I'm busy seeing to the kids and the husband and this and that. And why would I know? And if you don't know, who will?
But do you think that's also been because nobody's ever asked people, what do you want? Because we've gone from one role to the next role to the next role of just being there for others, that nobody's actually asked many people, what do you yourself want?
Exactly. And I asked this question. Nobody's asked anybody, what do you want? Especially women. And people get so cross with me when I post it on Facebook. Really, I've seen this response over and over again, the anger that comes up. And they'll always tell me, always, because I did the same. They'll always tell me what they don't want. That's the first response, what they don't want. And it sounds like such a simple question, Zaheerah, but really, it sometimes takes me a week to work through with the client, what do you want?
Absolutely. Tasneem, I think I could sit here for an entire session and talk to you, but these segments always end too fast. I'm sure viewers will be able to get in touch with you. Such a wealth of information and truly such an inspiration. May Allah take you from strength to strength,
Ameen.
inshallah.
Ameen.
Putting ourselves first, putting our minds first, and working from a holistic perspective is all about what Tasneem does. And as she says, work through it. Ask yourself, what do you want? Get in touch with her and figure out the process of finding yourselves again, so that we can live holistically and live very consciously every single day and every single moment. And that truly is the power of now. The one thing that Tasneem mentioned that I would be remiss if I don't bring it up to now is, when we deal with people on social media, we've got to deal with things from a point of kindness. And remember that always. My one concern has been that we constantly elevate people to levels where we think they are infallible, that they can't make mistakes. And the moment someone makes a mistake, we break them down ruthlessly. And we as Muslims need to be conscious that everybody's capable of mistakes. And we need to be conscious of the role models we have, and to what extent we elevate people to think that they are not capable of doing that. So please be very conscious of that on a regular basis as well. Stay tuned. When we come back, we continue with the conversations. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back after that break. You're watching iTREND on ITV, and I'm your host, Zaheerah Bham, Ismail. In our studio today is someone who has been trending very strongly over this past month of Ramadan with the launch of one of his latest CDs, a Nasheed. I say artist, he says it's too lofty a word, but I said definitely a Nasheed artist within our midst, Farzeen Nazeer Kardame. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And welcome to the studio. Farzeen, I was asking you, when did you start this? And you laughed and said, this has started from birth.
I'd like to think so, yeah. Yeah, no, alhamdulillah.
How did you get involved in the Nasheed business?
Sure. I think actually Nasheed business is probably but too much. It's more of a hobby and a passion for me. Alhamdulillah, I mean, about you talked about it started from birth is because people ask me for my influence of my first album, My Mu'min and Azan Ho Rahi Hai. And I literally do remember this, that I remember my mom singing us to sleep on that particular song. And that's kind of what I remember about it. So yes, singing, alhamdulillah, my my late father also, he was a very good singer. Allah Ta'ala blessed him and Allah Ta'ala has blessed us also, alhamdulillah. May Allah grant him Jannatul Firdaus. And then my mom, obviously she sings as well, and she used to put us off to sleep with these nazms and nasheeds, that's what we call them now. Yeah.
But that's exactly it, is that when I was listening to one of your nasheeds, it literally took me right back to my childhood, because I remember growing up hearing this in the house, hearing my grandmother saying this nazm, hearing my parents saying it, and I don't think I ever understood the meaning of it, and you had this meaning with it, and it absolutely was astounding.
Alhamdulillah, I'm so glad. I mean, one of the sort of the inspiration behind this and the reasons why we're doing this, and I do request all the listeners to also make dua, inshallah, that Allah give us success in this, is to promote our culture and our language. Now that particular one you're referring to is Allama Iqbal's, like, all-time greats, if you want to call it, in terms of poetry. Lappe aati hai dua ban ke tamanna mein. Amazing, beautiful meaning, so rich. And I usually end up singing that in most of like charity functions and where people are being charitable and doing good work and and it's specifically for those volunteers and dard mando se and zaifo se muhabbat karna, that to love the oppressed and to do good for the oppressed and do good for the old people. Zaifo se, those that are old and that infirm. So, I mean, the whole entire thing, how Allama Iqbal talks about that. And there's lots of Allama Iqbal talks about, like, may Allah make me like the little, the light of the little lamp to which moths are attracted and so on. So there's a lot of beautiful imagery in Urdu poetry. And Urdu itself is such an amazing language, mashallah. And I've been brought up with that. My home language is Urdu, alhamdulillah. I was born in India. And we still speak Urdu at home with my mom in particular. Yeah.
So that's exactly a discussion we were having just a few days ago about the fact that our current generation of children have truly missed out on learning another language. When I grew up, my first language that I actually learned was Gujarati, because I grew up with my grandmother. And we're saying that at this point, our children have lost out on learning another language. And Urdu is a phenomenal language, especially with regards to the poetry that we've seen coming out from many years. How do you encourage parents to actually teach their kids, whether it's Arabic, whether it's Urdu, whether it's any of the languages? How do you encourage families to say, teach your children an additional language to English?
Subhanallah. Not much to say about encouragement, but really the main for personally, I would say, I mean, it's very important, because language is an integral part of your own culture and your history. So in order to understand where you come from and to have roots back to where you come from, it's very important to understand your language. A lot of the literature, I mean, poetry is such a rich, amazing bit of art.
Yes.
In our culture, an amazing part of our culture. And when you listen to proper shairi, like poetry, the way it's meant to be, the way words themselves, and today you call them like a spoken word.
Yes.
So the power of the spoken word. It's just phenomenal way how you can play around in the nuances of language. You play around with that to create such emotions, just by saying a particular word in a particular order at a particular timing and so on and so a lot of that was present in the Urdu sort of language and Urdu poetry and shairi in particular. And I would say, parents, you asked about encouragement. Really, it's firstly to encourage ourselves, really, because I mean, the reason our kids are missing out is because we probably haven't
Absolutely.
We haven't kept it up, right? So first, it's like, you come to a stage where you say, we need to learn. So you decide you need to learn, and then inshallah the kids will follow.
Alhamdulillah. You sound like you held on very strongly to cultural roots as well, and tied that into almost every one of your CDs. When was the launch of the first CD, and what inspired that?
Our launch was in 1999. Alhamdulillah, Naghma Mu'min. I think, I've been singing before that for a very long time. When I was in India, I was born in India, I grew up singing, and when I was at school, I was sort of, the child that was picked up to sing. Okay, right, come to the top, right? We start singing. And Alhamdulillah, Allah Ta'ala has given me the ability and the natural ability. And then people sort of, you need people who spot you as well. you know, that pick you out. And then I was chosen for regional singing competitions in India. And then when we came to South Africa, the same thing happened because they were looking for somebody to sing in Urdu. And then one of the Maulanas found, and at the launch of sort of one of the, you know, our BMJ hall in Benoni, the Benoni Muslim Jamaat, when the actual madrasa building was put up, we had a big sort of function there. And then they were looking for somebody, and that's the time I actually sang Azan Ho Rahi Hai for the first time in South Africa. And there's a whole story behind it that I learned this particular song directly from my mom. I never knew who the writer of the song was. You know, where it was written, who it was sung by. I literally, you know, the way my mom sang it is the way. And when the CD was launched in 1999, alhamdulillah, it was pretty successful in Durban. So, you know, Al Ansar Radio, one of them, took me down for one of their functions. And then one of the organizers decided to say, no, do you know who's the lyricist behind it, who wrote this particular song? I said, I have no idea. He said, come. And we went to go and do a visit in Durban. And believe it or not, the writer of Azan Ho Rahi Hai, and it's a phenomenal, that's also such a beautiful song.
Yes.
It's about salah and about, you know, namaz in that. So Sheikh Moin Qazi Sahib, right? Allah grant him Jannatul Firdaus as well, inshallah. So he, I sat with him and we had a big conversation. He said, do you know who wrote this? I had no idea that you wrote it. I didn't even know it was written by a South African because I learned it in India. And then we come to realize it's written by somebody in Durban. So that culture, alhamdulillah, has been prevalent, like in South Africa as well. You know, our forefathers have kept it up as well, and that's the reason. I mean, there's two tracks, like on my first album in 1999, Taarif Us Khuda Ki is also written by Safi Siddiqui Sahib,
yes,
right, who's from Durban as well. Yes. So there's great poets in South Africa. It's not like, you know, like they were from India and they came here, and they've kept up all this as well. And I think it's just Allah Ta'ala has given me this opportunity. Hopefully I can contribute a bit more as well, and to the upkeep of our culture and our language, inshallah.
But what's amazing also is that you've taken that and they've been acknowledged in these CDs, and their work has been given a platform, because I think so often there are so many talented people that we have within our community who get forgotten, that we don't hear about, that we don't get to see, and you're making sure that that revival stays there.
Ji, alhamdulillah. You'll see in my new CD, Ahlan Ramadan. So that particular one has a lot of Urdu tracks in it. It's got English, so I've had to move towards English and, you know, Arabic as well, working in the UK and so on with a lot of other talented people. And there you'll find like the people who have written this poetry a long time ago. Some of them are late as well. And I still get emails and messages from the family saying, oh, subhanallah, thank you so much for, like, you know, reviving their poetry, because otherwise it's in books. And,
absolutely,
you know, it's in books, and unless you're a real aficionado or an academic, you're not really reading those poetry books. And by this way, like I remember performing once in England. There was a function, a Cockney function, and I stood up and I performed it, this particular song. And this lady comes up, and I had no clue that the family of this person whose poetry I was reciting was in the audience. She comes up and she said, do you know that my grandfather wrote that particular one? And she comes, you know. So this kind of inspiration, alhamdulillah, is something that inspires us as well.
Absolutely.
And I mean, whenever I'm interviewed on radio, something like that, then people come in there and they'll phone in, oh, this was my mom's favorite song, and this is the one.
Which is exactly what I was saying earlier as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're going to have to take a very quick ad break. When we come back, we continue discussing the inspirations and the motivations behind the Nasheed artist Farzeen. Stay tuned.
लब आती है दुआ बन के तमन्ना मेरी, लब पे आती है दुआ बन के तमन्ना मेरी, जिंदगी शम्म की सूरत हो खुदाया मेरी, जिंदगी शम्म की सूरत हो खुदाया मेरी, लब पे आती है दुआ बन के तमन्ना मेरी, हो मेरे दम से यूं ही मेरे वतन की जीनत, हो मेरे दम से यूं ही मेरे वतन की जीनत, जिस तरह फूल से होती है चमन की जीनत, जिस तरह फूल से होती है चमन की जीनत।
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the last segment of our show, and we're chatting to Nasheed artist Farzeen Nazeer Kardame. Farzeen, you were talking about our cultural holding onto these aspects, reviving poetry that has almost been forgotten, things that we've heard in our childhood that we're hearing again, which is absolutely beautiful because it gives us a platform to share it with our kids. And I'll definitely be sharing the one that was sent to me on my social media accounts as well. And I'm sure many of you will recognize it from your childhood. But your daughter is also very involved with you and features on one of your latest CDs. Tell us about how did you get her and the youth, I mean, she's very young, how did you get her involved in wanting to be a part of this?
Subhanallah. I mean, I think it's a journey, and living in the UK, it sort of started off there. She'll be probably a bit embarrassed about all this, but Alhamdulillah, she has been involved from a very young age. And what was the beauty of living in the UK? So we used to go to our schools where she was learning, and we used to perform on Eid Day. So the school used to invite us to say, okay, what is Eid all about? And Salah used to sing. And I used to play the duff, right? We used to teach her, and we used to see her Eid song. But the point behind the dawah, so I saw one of the ethos behind ITV is this thing. It's that kind of dawah, and it was just amazing how the kids took to. And these are all non-Muslim kids. I mean, these are 90% non-Muslim kids, mostly, right, in Bristol and in Marlow, wherever we lived. So she used to sing at those functions, and I mean, Alhamdulillah, she's also, Allah Ta'ala has given her talent, and that's what we try to tell the kids, that if Allah has given you a particular talent, your best way to thank Allah is to use that talent to praise Allah, and for the benefit of Deen and for the benefit of Islam, inshallah.
I think what a profound statement, that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with a talent, and He has blessed everyone with a talent, use the talent to praise Him. What a beautiful way to do that. But I always find that with our youth, you could go either way. You could decide that you want to do anything else, but you've chosen the Nasheed way, you've chosen that for your children. Your children have chosen that for themselves as well. Do you think for many of the children watching this, for the mums that are watching this, that want to encourage their children who have these talents in the right direction, what was it from your parents' point of view or from you that you've passed down to your children that almost clicked to say, this is the route I need to take? That was so strong to hold onto the Islamic values.
Right. And I think the most important part there, is we have to lead by example. Right, and that's how I learned, because my mom and my dad, my parents were my role models. And in order for us to become role models, we have to lead by example. Like they say, you can't tell a child, don't watch TV, and then you sit in front of the TV.
Absolutely.
Right? If you don't want your kids to watch TV, then don't watch TV. That yourself. So kids don't learn by listening, they learn by watching. Right? And that's something we've got to inculcate in our lives, and there's no other way around that. You want to teach kids to read Salah, then read Salah.
Absolutely.
Don't tell them to read Salah, right? That's the easiest way. So Alhamdulillah, that's the best advice I can really give. So yes, Even in Benoni, and there is lots of mums who are alhamdulillah, very talented youngster who's in Benoni as well, Yahya Sheikh. He's also featuring on my album as well, and alhamdulillah, I try to promote this as well to bring the youngsters in.
Absolutely.
And there's definitely temptations to go, anyway, all right, you can. And look, none of us are perfect. None of us, you can't say I've never listened to music ever in my life, and that music is around us. Music, I'm going to listen to music. I have listened to music, so whatever. But the point is, you have to give kids alternative.
Absolutely.
Right? If you give kids an alternative, that's the only way they're going to come close. And the way to do is, this is something that's sort of in my heart as well, that it would be nice if the business community in South Africa can also get involved in promoting arts and culture.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah, one of the blessings of living in South Africa, which we really, really need to appreciate, living abroad and then coming back here, is our Islamic infrastructure in this country. It's phenomenal. I mean, there's no other word for it. There's masajids everywhere. There's halal bodies which are properly governed.
Yes.
Islamic schools, properly governed Islamic schools. There's so much infrastructure. But what I do find lacking is, a bit of arts and culture. It's a perfect time. In your businesses, alhamdulillah, they contribute so much to all these other things. Charity. I mean, charity is just phenomenal, mashallah, in this country, right? So together with that, we should give a bit of this thing to this. So let's promote arts and culture, Islamic proper ethos, Islamic ethos, arts and culture in our country.
And this is something that has come up by a number of Nasheed artists as well over the years, of enjoying the celebration by our own community of the talent that we have. And I think you're absolutely right. In order to give alternatives to our children, we need to be able to celebrate that as well. And we need to open those doors. And inshallah, we will take heed of that. Just very quickly also to tell me about your new CD. Where do you get the inspiration and the motivation from to be able to put these tracks? Because I know Shairi or the poetry is definitely one of them. But to put a CD together, people don't understand in the background how difficult it is and how much of time it takes to be able to put this out.
No, I mean, look, for sure. I mean, there's been so many times, people keep on asking, now, Hafiz, when's the next one coming out? When is the next one coming out? And without realizing what it actually takes to get this thing done. But believe me, that is one of the inspiration. It's the people. It's the people that listen to it, that enjoy it. And now, I mean, if you think about it, one of the greatest sort of pleasures that you get out of this is when you go and meet a parent and say, this one I put every morning, I put this nasheed on in my car, and my daughter absolutely loves it. And then they send me, now with social media, they can send you a video with the daughter enjoying it. And then somebody when I start my business in the morning, I put this particular track on. I mean, that is just, that is exactly why we're doing these things. So yes, you want an alternative? Here we go. Enjoy the alternative as well. And that's how you should be doing it. I mean, mashallah, we say we are not, we are discussing this on one of the other radio stations as well. Yes, of course, we can keep on saying, put the Quran on in Ramadan, but, yes, we are going to put the Quran on, but give other alternatives as well.
Especially for our youth.
Yes, especially for our youth, right?
Like you're saying.
You rather switch straight from the Quran in Ramadan to whatever, I don't know.
And I think that's a wonderful thing, because when we listen to the qaris that we have also in South Africa, the Quran recitations are absolutely amazing. And again, we don't celebrate that enough. The Nasheed artists are absolutely phenomenal. Again, we don't celebrate that. And these are the alternatives we have to our children listening to other music and other sources of media, So I think alhamdulillah for giving that platform, and especially for inculcating and incorporating the youth into these CDs and making them a part of it. What would be your advice for anyone who wants to walk down this journey? Because I'm sure it hasn't been completely easy. I know many Nasheed artists sit here with many CDs having come out, and alhamdulillah, it's a success. But people also don't understand that there may have been a number of pitfalls along the way and a number of challenges along the way. For you, what has been the most difficult challenges or things that have tested you the most along this journey?
Sure. Look, we're blessed really, alhamdulillah, whatever little challenges is nothing compared to, but in terms of this, nasheeds, and that the biggest challenge is being appreciated in our community, believe it or not. Because it's weird that I can go abroad and be more appreciated than what I'm within my own community.
Yes.
You know? And that's not to say your local community doesn't, but not to the extent. I mean, there you go there, and then they treat you like royalty.
No, but
They put you
absolutely.
up wherever you want and all that.
I think it's a
lacking.
very important aspect, but I think it comes down again to the conversation of having that we don't celebrate the talent within our communities. And like you're saying, overseas, people wait for that because the Islamic structures are not as developed as the ones we have here. Things that we take for granted are much more appreciated on that side. And we do take a lot for granted because we have such easy access to it.
Yeah. No, so true. I mean, look, that is what I would say. Like, if we can appreciate our local talent, I'm sure there's, there are functions that are happening. Look, I mean, instead of inviting overseas artists, there's lots of talent around here. You can invite those people. If you have limitations, it's got to be like this, or whatever your parameters are. There's lots of artists who perform within those parameters. So please, if you can support local talent, that will grow the whole. The cultural identity. It will encourage youngsters to come into it. I mean, believe it or not, these are not only my comments, but some of the upcoming youngsters that I speak to, it's the same comment to say, okay, look, I want to do nasheeds, but you know what? I think I'm going to do contemporary music now because I didn't get the recognition.
And that for me is the worry. That becomes the fear of it, because if we're losing our youth to be able to say that there's no acceptance within our community or very little acceptance, the alternatives are dire, and that's what we're going to have to face the consequences of. So I think you're absolutely correct in being able to say that we need to provide these platforms. And as much as we constantly stay on our show that, we need to be having we support proudly South African talent, proudly South African resources, communities, work, entrepreneurs. We also need to be supporting proudly South African talent as well, especially within our Muslim communities.
Definitely.
Where does the journey for Farzeen take you from here?
Oh, Allahu Alam, really. Allah is the best judge of that. As you've been seeing, alhamdulillah, it's like totally blessed. We've been blessed to travel around everywhere. I would like to focus more on this. I mean, look, this is not my day job. Well, until last couple of months.
That's why as I mentioned to Tasneem as well, sitting here, and we often say to our viewers that everybody sitting here is never sitting here because this is the job that they've chosen initially. This has always been a passion, something that they feel very strongly about, and something that they feel committed to. So, alhamdulillah, you're one of many.
No, but that's the way it is. But it can actually be. I mean, if you look at it, that if there was a real promotion within our community, and it can be, there is a lot of space in Islam, to have fun in a halal manner.
Absolutely.
To enjoy our Eids, our functions, and whatever in a halal manner. And so we have the ulama, we have them to guide us as well within those bounds, within the bounds of Sharia, and that let's explore. And expand our cultural sort of heritage and everything else.
I take it that means that we're going to be looking forward to Mercedes again coming forward from you,
so,
inshallah.
No, there is inshallah plan. Hopefully, if this one is a great success, and inshallah with everybody's support and du'as, inshallah, the plan is there. And one of my dream ones is to have a particular one about Allama Iqbal's poetry.
Inshallah.
Because alhamdulillah, that's what I grew up in. My mom keeps on saying this few du'as of that are written by Allama Iqbal, absolutely powerful, absolutely relevant to our time. And I pray that Allah give us strength to do this, what you said about the translation. So the next step is to do translations of every single Urdu one on social media, on YouTube, to have a translation for each of these.
So we look forward to following your journey and also getting to hear more of that. Shukran so much for joining us on air and sharing your stories with us.
Jazakallah khair to you and to ITV and
Alhamdulillah.
to all the sponsors.
Farzeen Nazeer Kardame. You can follow his story on social media, find out about the latest CDs that he's presented, and also the previous ones as well. I promise you won't go wrong. It will definitely take you for a trip down memory lane. Let's continue inculcating this revival of celebrating talent within our community, especially amongst our youth as well. Shukran so much for joining us on air today. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.